I'm Dr. Deb Butler, and you are listening to Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. This is episode number 462. Well, hello, all my dear friends, near and far, in this country and out of this country. You can see me and you can hear me now. You can go to YouTube, Dr. Deb Butler, and you can actually see me with my new background. I'm testing backgrounds, so if you like my background, let me know. But if you're listening on your regular platforms of podcasts, please listen up because I have some great news for you. There is help for you if you're in menopause and you're trying to lose weight and you've been struggling with weight your whole life and you're sick of it. This podcast is for you. And this is what I want to talk about today. I have a free guide called Jumpstart Your Weight Loss in Menopause. And, it's kind of about the weight, and yet it's not about the weight at all. At least that's what most of my clients tell me. But last week, I talked about my very first tool in Jumpstart Your Weight Loss in Menopause, which is your physical hunger scale. And this idea that I talk about is that I don't think I know there are problems with hormones. I know that our bodies are changing. Believe me, I know that. But if you're a woman and you've been struggling with weight your whole life, and now menopause is making it harder than ever, then I'm not sure that is exactly what the problem is. I think you have to start with the obvious. And this is the most obvious thing I know about weight loss and menopause is your appetite has been decreasing for years. And yet most of the people that I talk to and that I coach tell me their appetite is increasing and they're hungrier than ever. And this is not a physiological fact because the truth is metabolism is slowing down. Your appetite is decreasing. What is that appetite that you think is increasing? I have news for you. It is not your physical appetite. It is not your physical hunger. It is what I call emotional hunger. And emotional hunger is very, very different from physical hunger. And if you want to find out more, it is in this guide that goes along with my podcast and goes along with these first two episodes of Jumpstart in Thinner Peace and Menopause. So last week, 461, I talked about physical hunger scale where you can get this guide. Today, I'm talking about emotional hunger, which is very, very different from physical hunger. But so many women tell me they're hungrier than ever. And I understand what they mean because there was a time when that's where I was too. I'm not in menopause anymore, I'm happy to say. And I'm a lot older, but I'm also a lot wiser. And I learned a lot about my body. And I learned a lot where I can help people trust themselves again and have confidence in themselves again. Menopause is a wake-up call. It's a transition, a normal transition in your body, and what I call a true transformation. What really do you want in this life of yours, in this precious life of yours? Well, this is what I know for sure. If you think you're hungrier than ever, and it's not physical hunger because most of the time it's not, it's emotional hunger. Your appetite feels like it's increasing because you feel hungry all the time, but you feel hungry all the time because you are emotionally hungry. Now, emotions can show up in all kinds of ways. I did a podcast not too long ago on boredom is not a food group. But there's a lot of emotions that I could talk about that are not food groups. Loneliness is not a food group. Anger is not a food group. Sadness is not a food group. Happiness is not a food group. None of those are food groups, yet many of you fill those groups up with food as if they were. Now, emotions are there for a reason, and they live in your body, and they get stronger, I believe, as you get older. And I think in menopause, for many of us, those emotions get very, very strong. Sometimes for reasons that can be controlled, but many times because it's just been there all along and it's bigger than ever because these emotions have not been taken care of. And if you've been struggling with weight your whole life and you've been able to control your weight, even though you're eating your emotions, you're going to find out that in menopause, you can't do that anymore. I used to say that the tricks that I used to use before menopause, like starving myself or not eating for a few days or only eating a certain type of food, and I could drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks. No big deal, which is the way I lived the first 40, 50 years of my life. I was either restricting myself or having a big old party with food and not paying any attention to my body. So I have this Jumpstart Your Weight Loss in Menopause guide, which goes along with this podcast. And this is the second tool that's called emotional hunger. The first tool was just called physical hunger, which means the big question in the tool for physical hunger is, do you know when you're hungry and do you know when you're full? So first you figure that out. That takes a minute or two if you've never even asked yourself that question. Am I hungry or am I full? So now that you've been doing that, now the next question is, if I'm not hungry, and you will know if you are or you aren't, what's going on? Usually it's an emotion, and it's what we call emotional hunger. And emotional hunger is like emotional holes. You can feel them or you can fill them. Many of you are filling them and wondering why you can't lose weight in menopause. Your emotions are getting stronger in menopause. If you're used to filling your emotions with food, what a big surprise that you're gaining weight because your emotions are stronger and you're filling them with food. Now, if you look at this guide, all you have to do is go to drdebbutler.com. That's DRDEBBUTLER.com. And that's with a /change, CHANGE. You can download this free guide. I don't know. What have you got to lose? I know there's a lot of people here telling you how you can lose weight and all you got to do is this and all you got to do is that. I don't think it's all you got to do. I just think that it's an awakening to figure out that it's not what you're eating, it's why you're eating what you're eating. And if you're eating lettuce when you're not hungry, then that is still emotional eating, and it is emotional hunger, and it's not the way you can lose weight. If you're eating when you're not hungry, I don't care if it's a brownie or a salad, it's not healthy and you're not going to lose weight, because that means that you can eat when you're not hungry and you just think that as long as it's a certain kind of food, you can eat when you're not hungry. I want to teach you how to not eat when you're not hungry and to eat when you are hungry and to figure out what type of nutritious food actually fuels your body, which is what I call fuel food. So it's as simple as that for this podcast. Are you emotionally eating? If you are, that's because you know you're not physically hungry. You know it. If you don't know that, go back to the first podcast, 461, and hear what I have to say about it. Or download the guide, How to Lose Weight in Menopause, Jumpstart. I love the term jumpstart because it's a jump start when you ask yourself the simple question, am I hungry or am I full? You've probably never done that before. Up until the time I was 50, it never occurred to me. I was counting my points, or I was counting my calories, or I was eating foods that were not fattening, or I was doing something that I thought would help me lose weight that had nothing to do with being hungry. So I think if you're 50 or over, don't you think that's a good question to ask yourself and to know what that answer is? And then if you're feeling an emotion, don't fill it with food. Now, in the special guide that I'm asking you to get, and I know everybody on the internet is asking you to get something, but I'm here because I have a purpose and a passion, or I wouldn't be doing it. And that is to free you from this food obsession and for you to believe, number one, there is nothing wrong with you. And number two, you actually can eat whatever you want. If you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full and you know what your fuel foods are, brownies aren't problems. Brownies are only problems if you don't have your brain under control. Now, I believe the brain is the problem, not the brownie. If this is interesting to you, and you've been listening to my podcast for a while, but you're hearing it in a different way right now, go get the guide, drdebbutler.com/change. Now, I would never end this podcast, even though it might be new to some of you, but I would never end it without saying this to you, because as important as it is to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, it's also very, very important that you're nice to yourself and that you say nice things to yourself and that you're kind to yourself. Because if you're not kind to yourself, none of this will work. So as I end this podcast today, please, please, please be very, very kind to yourself. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.